Hi everyone, my name is Matt and welcome to my channel. I've been working on a Separatist Alliance army for Star Wars Legion, and today I'm painting some of the new B-2 rocket battle droids, which were generously sent to me by Atomic Mass Games. We'll use a few easy techniques to get these models looking great and on the tabletop quickly, so grab your brushes and let's get started. After assembling the models, I undercoated them with black primer and then attached them to corks for easier handling. I decided to use my airbrush to base coat the models, but you could just as easily paint them by hand with a large brush. I diluted some Iron Hand steel with water and built up several thin layers on the models for an even finish. With the base coats applied, next I shaded the models all over with a generous layer of Nuln oil. When working with shades, I like to use a large brush and apply plenty of paint so it flows into all the recesses. Then I'll use the brush to soak up any excess. Pay attention to the large flat areas like the top of the jetpack, and use the brush to wipe away some of the wet paint. This helps create a smoother surface, and it will save some time when it comes to highlighting the models in the next step. Shades tend to dull down the shine of metallic colors, so next I highlighted the models with a light dry brush to restore the shine and to smooth out any areas where the shade dried unevenly. Grab a small amount of paint and wipe off most of it with a paper towel. Then drag the brush across the model and the paint will naturally collect on the raised areas while avoiding the recesses. I like to move the brush in different directions and sometimes a circular pattern. There are a lot of specialty dry brushing products available, and you could definitely use those if you want to, but I like to use an old synthetic brush for dry brushing. With the steel armor finished, next I added some markings on the armor with Flesh Terror's Red. This color is semi-transparent, which allows some of the metallic base coat to show through. I referenced the markings on the box art, but simplified the designs a little bit to speed up the process. These droids have seen a lot of fighting, so I'd like to add some battle damage and weathering. An easy way to create random looking marks is with a piece of foam or sponge. I tore off a small piece of foam, dipped it into silver paint, and tapped it on a paper towel to remove any excess. Tap the sponge anywhere you think the weathering is more likely to occur, such as the edges and the sharp corners. These marks won't really show up on the silver parts of the armor, so I'm focusing on the red areas only. The sponge is a great way to make a bunch of tiny scratches, but I want to add a few more marks and bigger scratches for extra variety. Using a sharp brush with diluted Iron Hand steel, I like to use the existing marks as a starting point, and I added a few brush marks to refine what's already there. Now is a great time for me to ask you for a helping hand. I would like to make content creation my full-time job, and I can't do that without your help. If you enjoy the channel, please give the video a like, a hype if you can, and share it with someone who may enjoy it as well. You may have also noticed that I don't have brand advertisements or paid sponsors in my videos. This channel is possible because of the generous support of our channel members. If you'd like to support the channel in that way, please consider Patreon or a YouTube channel membership. We have some perks including a Discord server, printer-friendly PDF files of our new recipe cards, and early access to videos. Now that all the scratches have been added, next I want to add some dirt and grime. I diluted Ratling Grime contrast paint with a small amount of water and then stippled it with a sponge. This paint is very fluid, so it's important to remove excess paint from the sponge using a paper towel. Otherwise it will flood the model. This color shows up better on the silver armor, so this time I'm focusing on those areas, and anywhere else I think the dirt and grime might accumulate. Next I painted the eye lenses and the light on the chest with black. After that dried, I painted the light with moon yellow, leaving a narrow black outline. Then I painted the light with a small amount of Flesh Terror's red. A few of the models have flames and exhaust smoke coming from the jetpacks. I base coated the smoke with a mix of about equal parts white and Stormvermin fur. If you don't feel like mixing anything, any kind of similar light gray should be fine. After the first layer dried, I painted a second for an opaque finish. I mixed in some more white paint for a lighter gray and painted the top portion of the smoke. For a blended effect, I diluted the paint with water and applied a couple glazes. Next, I painted the flames with a few layers of white. I want the flames to be really bright, so it's important to start with an opaque white base coat. Next, I painted the flames with moon yellow. I used a glaze to blend out the edge of the flames into the smoke. Dilute the paint with water, and with very little paint on the brush, add a transparent layer where the flame meets the smoke. There should be barely any paint getting on the model. It should be just enough to tint the layers beneath, and the paint should dry almost as soon as it leaves the brush. If it runs or flows on the model, it means your brush is overloaded. Next, I painted the edges of the flames with Fire Dragon, leaving the light yellow in the recesses. I diluted the paint with water and built up a few thin glaze layers for a blended effect. Remember, there should be barely any paint on the brush, and the paint should dry almost as soon as it touches the model. When you add water to paint, it becomes more difficult to control, and it has a tendency to run off the brush. Having very little paint on the brush gives us better control of it, and allows for more precision. I darkened the edge of the flames one more time with a few glazes of Wild Rider red. Next, I shaded the smoke with a mix of about 6 parts contrast medium and 1 part Stormvermin fur. For a blended edge where the smoke meets up against the flames, I quickly rinsed my brush, wiped it on a paper towel, and then used the clean brush to remove some of the wet paint and soften the edge. After the shade dried, I painted a second layer on the smoke, starting a little further down than the layer before. My goal here is to create a gradient with light gray at the top, blending to a darker gray at the bottom. Next, I shaded the smoke with Nuln oil, again covering a slightly smaller surface area than the previous layer. I blended the top edge the same way as before, by quickly rinsing my brush, drying it on a paper towel, and then using the clean brush to wipe away some of the paint and soften the edge. After that layer of Nuln oil dried, I painted another layer a little further down than before. You can paint as many layers as you want, with each layer darkening the bottom of the smoke a little more. I ended up painting 3 layers of Nuln oil. I used an old brush to apply a generous layer of wood glue to the top of the base. I prefer using wood glue rather than PVA or white glue. The bond is stronger, and it's also waterproof once it dries. Then I sprinkled on some coarse gravel and fine sand. After the glue dried, I painted the sand with thinned Rhinox hide. PVA glue would reactivate during this step and take a lot longer to dry. Since wood glue is waterproof, the sand will dry a lot quicker. Next, I highlighted the sand with a heavy dry brush of XV88 brown, followed by a light dry brush of Bonewhite. I painted the rocks with Dawnstone, and then shaded them with a mix of Agrax Earthshade and Nuln oil. I painted the edge of the base black, and after that dried, I added patches of static grass with superglue. I'd like to give a big shout out to our supporters here on YouTube and Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. It really is a huge help. If you want to be like these amazing people and help support what I'm doing here, just click the join button down below or follow the Patreon link in the video description. Thank you. I have some more Star Wars Legion models I'd like to paint up for the channel soon. Some of the new Mandalorians, a few more models for my Separatist Alliance army, and some Echo base rebels. What would you like to see on the channel next? Drop a comment below and start the conversation. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and until next time, happy painting!